Garden Guide with your host, Mark Anderson from Anderson Seed and Garden.
New research suggests that people are more likely to eat vegetables if they have a tempting name.
What would life be without homegrown tomatoes? Only two things that money can't buy, and that's true love and homegrown tomatoes.
From gardening to landscaping.
Today we are going to try and create garden eyebrows. Kind of like the flowers are sprouting directly from your hair. So that makes sense.
Go! Phone lines are open at 753-KVNU or 800-369-KVNU.
Kind of like eating vegetables.
It's the Garden Guide, now on KVNU 610 AM and 102 FM.
And welcome to the Garden Guide. On this Saturday, we'll feel right along with Mark Anderson of Anderson Seed and Garden, where we talk about all things lawn and garden. Coming off, of course, the Home and Garden Show, which was last weekend, which got a lot of people excited to get outdoors. And weather-wise, looking ahead, it's definitely going to continue to be spring.
It's looking a lot like spring outside.
But you just never know. And
especially in Cache Valley, because, Cache Valley, we could have amazing weather here in March, and then we could have snow and cold in April, and we could have snow and cold in May, and you just never know what you're going to get. Yeah. But I'm going to tell you, in the last 30 years at Anderson Seed, and we keep track of the weather, like, really closely. In the last 30 years, there's only been 1 year it didn't freeze in May. Out of the 30. One. And then it froze in June.
Yes, we remember that one.
Yeah. So don't think about planting your tomatoes and your peppers and your petunias, things that are tender until at least May, and then we're still going to want to protect those a little bit. So everybody's getting a little excited about the spring weather. So we'll temper that with some reality.
And we have to remember that, it is still March for still a few more days.
It is.
And still we've got April, and Mother Nature loves those late April Fool's pranks.
Yeah, but think all the things that you can do because the weather has been cooperative, So everybody's lawns are starting to perk up, and our trees are starting to flower, and we can get all those early crops in because it's not so wet that we can't plant. Mm-hmm. Last year it was so wet that we couldn't even plant in March. Like, I didn't get my stuff planted until like the first or second week of April last year because March was so wet. Yeah. So this year you can actually get out and till the ground. You can dig a hole and plant a beautiful new fruit tree or a new shrub or a new shade tree. And it doesn't fill up with water. Yeah. So it's a real bonus to be able to get out there and actually get some stuff done in the yard. So it's been quite refreshing.
And you're going to have the best selection right now at Anderson Seed and Garden because a lot of the plants that you've been waiting on just came in this week.
Oh, yeah. So bare root plants, we've got a great selection of raspberries and strawberries, blueberries. I've got another batch of honeyberries showing up here any day now. So honeyberries are going to show up. And then this week we got our next shipment of fruit trees in, which I've been waiting for about, 10, 14 days.
2 weeks.
That's when I start sweating and going, are they going to show up? Are they going to show up? And so we've got some more peaches and more cherries and more apples, and all of our pears came in as well too. So we've got a great selection of fruit trees, bare root right now. And bare root, they are much better priced. They're about 30 to 35% off of their regular price. So great pricing on those trees. They kind of start around $40 for, and these aren't little ones. They're like 5 to 6 foot bare root trees that are, 5/8 inch caliper up to an inch caliper. So there's some really, really nice trees in there, and they're just ready to be planted. So great time to do that. And of course our container sales going on right now as well too. So we have some shade trees and some flowering trees in 5-gallon containers that are marked at a 30% discount. So that would be as if they were bare root. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it kind of matches our bare root sale. So we've got a really nice selection of 5-gallon shade and flowering trees that are 30% off to match the bare root prices, even though they're already in containers.
Okay.
Yeah, great pricing on those.
All right.
Yeah.
So Great deals at Anderson Seed and Garden going on today. Now, with it being the garden show here on this Saturday morning, we're not able to take phone calls and your questions on the phone, but we've got a lot of questions that we've had come in over the last couple of weeks, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll be able to talk a lot about those today, and chances are we're going to be answering your questions because everybody's getting out into the yard. They're wanting to know how to be able to perk their lawn up. They're wanting to know what plants can go into a garden because cold crops definitely can go in right now. And, as I was out checking our fruit trees, peach and apricots are already starting to blossom.
Starting to bloom. So while those fruit trees are blooming, and it's usually those stone fruits that start off early. So it's apricots first, and then all of a sudden it's plums, and then it's cherries and peaches and nectarines blooming. It's critical that we don't spray for insects while they're in bloom, except for the nectarines. And so nectarines get an insect that is called a thrip, and the thrips get into the blossoms of the nectarines, and they actually damage the fruit as it's forming. So as the bees come in and they pollinate the flowers and the fruit starts to form, those thrips will damage the fruit while it's forming, and then you'll get what's called a cat-faced nectarine. And so it looks like it's deformed and it's kind of misshapen, and that's from thrip damage. So there's something you can do to prevent that without hurting the bees. And so for nectarines, to prevent cat facing on your nectarines, and that is my absolute favorite fruit, nectarines. Like the best. Love them. But you got to spray them while they're in bloom.
Okay.
And we use a very specific insecticide that is called spinosad. Now, the spinosad will not hurt bees, and it really won't hurt other insects, except it kills the larval stages of a lot of insects, caterpillars and worms, the larval stages of moths. It works great on those, but actually works on thrip as well, too. And so while it's in bloom, when it hits full bloom, spray it with spinosad, and then again about 5 to 7 days later, and that should completely take care of your thrip damage on your nectarines for the entire year. But you got to do it while they're in bloom, so it's really critical. Timing is critical for those nectarines, so make sure and spray while they're in bloom. And
but nectarines are the only fruit.
The only one. Yeah, the only one. Because the
bloom.
thrips won't bother the peaches or the cherries or the apricots. It's just the nectarines. So we got to spray those nectarines to prevent that from happening. Because if you love nectarines as much as I do, then you want them to be big and full and beautiful and not misshapen because of the thrip damage. While your stone fruits are in bloom, though, it's actually a really good time to think about trying to prevent some diseases. And there's some fungicides that we can use that will not hurt your bees, but will prevent diseases from damaging your trees later on. So like bacterial bud blight and blossom bud blast. Those are both tongue twisters.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Blossom bud blight and bacterial. So anyway, great to spray those. In fact, usually when we're treating our trees for fire blight, like say our pears and our apples, we'll use garden foss to prevent that. And the garden foss is a systemic fungicide that works on a lot of bacterial diseases. And you can use that right on the trunk of the trees. So you don't even spray the blossoms with it. You just spray the trunk with it. It absorbs it in through the trunk, runs it through the circulatory system of the tree. Will protect the tree for about 3 months. Now, the garden foss is labeled for use on fire blight. Very, very effective on that. You can use it for bacterial bud blight and for the blossom bud blast as well too, and use it on the trunk instead of spraying the tree with it. And then it's critical that after the blossoms drop off that you do put a preventative spray on there to prevent these diseases from getting into the fruit right after they form. So copper soap, F-stop, those are both excellent for all those diseases, and you can do it right after the blossoms drop off. So really, the only thing we're spraying on our stone fruits during bloom season is the spinosad for the nectarines, for the thrips on the nectarines. Then, if you need to, we can do the garden foss on the trunk of the trees while they're in bloom, or you can wait until they're done blooming And then we'd use the
treat it.
copper soap or the F-stop, the myclobutanil, works really, really well for those diseases after the blossoms have dropped off. And usually we'll recommend 2 applications. One right when the blossoms drop off, and one about 10 to 14 days later. And that usually gets you through that cool, wet springtime season when those diseases are spreading around. Now for fire blight on apples and pears, I saw a sample just yesterday of fire blight from last year. Prune out all the parts that are infected, and then right now, even before the apples and the pears start to bloom, I'm seeing a few popping around the valley, but not a lot yet. Garden floss on those preventatively. Okay. And that trunk treatment that I discussed just a little earlier, that trunk treatment will last for 3 months. So you do it before they bloom, and then it will last through the bloom period and through the first part of the spring and protect your trees from getting infected from the fire blight. That's really the most effective way to prevent and also to cure some trees that have already been damaged by fire blight. And if you've had fire blight in your trees, you know what I'm talking about. It does a lot of damage in a very, very short amount of time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, with trees blooming already, some would say, oh, I've missed the window to prune. Is it too late to prune once your trees have started to blossom out?
Not necessarily. So we don't like to prune too much while they're in bloom. Yeah. You know, if there's some broken branches, that's fine. You can prune those anytime. But after they're done blooming, you can still prune. And what I would recommend is, don't do a real severe, harsh prune, but we're going to talk 20 or 25% of the branches being eliminated would not hurt the tree at all. And water sprouts that come off the top of the trees and suckers that come up from the root system, those don't count towards your 20 to 25%. Those, we just need to get rid of those. Just get rid of those. But if you prune 20 to 25%, and we're talking take out branches that are redundant and branches that are crossing over and branches that maybe have some damage or maybe got diseased last year from fire blight, absolutely take those out. Then start doing some shaping and directing of the branches. And if you prune 20 or 25% off the tree, it's actually going to help it produce better. And so you're better off, if you haven't pruned up to this point, to go ahead and wait until after they're done blooming, and then still go ahead and do your pruning. Just don't prune quite as aggressively as you normally would.
Well, now, and I was pruning our little apricot tree that we just put in last year, my daughter and I noticed what I thought was a water sprout.
Yeah.
But then as I started looking at it closer, it actually had some buds on it. And will water sprouts actually bud out?
They can, but usually it's not a flower bud. It's usually a leaf bud.
Oh, okay.
And so they look quite similar. Usually the flower buds are a little bit rounder. They're a little bit, the shape's a little bit different, but they will put out leaf buds. And so if it is a different color than the rest of the tissue, it's shooting straight up off of a horizontal branch or a lateral branch of the tree, then it's probably a water sprout, and you still want to get rid of it.
Okay.
Yeah, still want to get rid of it.
This is coming out actually off the very top of the tree, so it's almost like the tree is thinking
it might be trying to create a new central leader.
Right.
So at that point, if it's going to be productive growth, you could absolutely leave it, but we don't want that growth going straight up. At some point, we'd want to encourage it to go out. Yeah, and open it up. Not necessarily in a vase shape. You said it was an apricot? Mm-hmm. Yeah, apricot. You can prune that in a vase shape completely. So you would kind of leave the middle empty and encourage all the growth to go out in all directions, all the way around the tree. And apricots kind of tend to grow crooked. They don't want to grow straight anyway. Yeah. So sometimes you're like pruning to try and encourage it to go in some different directions, because apricots, for some reason, they don't want to go where you want them to go. No, they have a mind of their own, and they're just going to go all over the place. So I'm usually pruning my apricot very, very strategically each year, because if I don't, it just grows wherever it wants to go. It does what it wants. Yeah, it does.
Okay. So if your trees are starting to already blossom out, those fruit trees, hold off on the pruning and wait until after those blossoms have fallen off.
And it is not going to hurt the tree to prune after it's done blooming, unless you do like really severe pruning. Like if you're going 50%, then it might do a little bit of damage. But, branches that are broken, or if we get a if we get a snowstorm in April, which is a possibility after the leaves come out, we could get some breakage. And so pruning throughout the season just really isn't going to do any damage to the tree. But after it's done blooming, we don't encourage really, really heavy pruning at all. But in some cases, it's better to prune even after the blossoms because the tree just needs to be thinned out, and we got to correct some of those branches that maybe will break when we do get a snowstorm in April, or if we get that really early snowstorm in October, before the trees are starting to firm up. Yeah, it can really do some damage. So springtime is when you select the best branches that are going to, make really good, strong scaffold branches. And then your lateral branches coming off that are going to be a little bit more horizontal because that's where your fruit production is. So really pruning properly makes your trees stronger, not weaker. And it makes them produce more, not less. Yeah.
All right, we're talking with Mark Anderson of Anderson Seed and Garden here on the Garden Guide. Again, not able to take phone calls for the show today, but a lot to talk about besides just fruit trees and tree pruning and everything else. Of course, a lot of insects already starting.
Yeah.
Just killed a wasp just a few minutes ago here in the studio. And so
at the Home and Garden Show, I had people coming in saying they had mosquitoes already. And then we saw some at our house as well too. And I was like, dang, these are some pretty good sized mosquitoes. So we must have had plenty of water this winter. Just no snow. And so a lot of water means standing water, and that's kind of where the mosquitoes are going for it. And it has been warm enough for mosquitoes like eggs that were laid last year for them to start hatching. Yeah, so that's probably where we're seeing. So it might actually be good for us to get an early hatch on some of these insects and then have it turn cold and kill a whole generation of the insects off. And that's usually when we get good control on grasshoppers, so we don't have like lots and lots and lots of grasshoppers. They emerge early, and then the weather kind of kills a bunch of them off. So hopeful that maybe we'll see that with the mosquitoes as well too. But we are seeing box elder bugs, and I've got a lot of people coming in with box elder bug problems right now. So there's a really great new product that came out from High Yield, and it is called Bug Blaster Lambda. And this Bug Blaster is a new formulation of Bug Blaster, which has been around for a long time, but it's safe to use on a lot of fruits and vegetables. And it's got a long residual on structures. It has just the right residual on plants, so it's great for ornamental plants, turf, edibles. No problems there, and very, very effective on a lot of these hard to kill insects. So box elder bugs, elm seed beetles, stink bugs, works great on all of those, but also works on ants and earwigs and spiders and grasshoppers and a lot of smaller insects as well too, like aphids or thrips, and even works on spider mites. So it's a nice general purpose insecticide that is safe for people, but very effective on a lot of the insects that we're trying to target, which are really causing a nuisance around the house or causing problems on our plants as well too. So great product from High Yield, the Bug Blaster Lambda.
And the Bug Blaster Lambda is kind of a newer formulation.
It is one of the newest versions of synthetic pyrethroid. So like permethrin's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Probably close to 40 years that we've been using permethrin. And this is one of the newest generation versions of permethrin that has a lower active ingredient, so a very, very small amount of active ingredient to do the same job as what we were using with, let's say, permethrin 30 years ago. And so very effective, long-lasting, low toxicity for people, but very, very effective on the insects that we're trying to control.
Okay.
Yeah. Good stuff.
So you mentioned that a few people came up to you at the Home and Garden Show and were asking about insects and how to be able to get insects under control. What were some of the other questions that came up at the Home and Garden Show this
actually
year?
I had numerous people asking about repellents this year because they didn't want to use an insecticide. And so I really don't want to use an insecticide. What can I use? It's like, what can I use?
Natural.
And I've had amazing results using repellents instead of using insecticides to push the insects away before they even come into the yard. And so, cedar oil, we've been talking about that for quite a few years. It comes in a granule form. It comes in a liquid form, and it is safe to use on all kinds of plants, and it just drives the insects crazy. They just will leave and go somewhere else. And so the cedar oil, same concept as having a cedar chest to put your valuable clothing and things in. The cedar repels the insects that don't come and lay eggs that damages your wedding dress, or your dowry that you've put into your cedar chest. That's there to drive those insects away so they don't come and do damage to some of the fabrics. And so it works the same way in your yard. So you can use the new Mosquito Go or the newer Grasshopper Go from Fertilome, and it's saturated with cedar oil. It smells awesome. It smells really, really good. But you can broadcast that around your yard. Not only will it keep mosquitoes away, but it keeps grasshoppers away and all kinds of other insects. Works really, really well on flying insects, not as well on ground crawling insects. So I've noticed it doesn't really work as well on like, say, earwigs or spiders, and won't drive the spiders away. But flying insects really don't like it. So moths that are coming in to lay their eggs on your plants, or flies that are coming in to lay their eggs on your plants, or grasshoppers, as those eggs hatch out, they start to do damage.
Yeah.
It's the larvae are just like eating all your plants.
And a lot of times the little tender blossoms.
Yeah. And so if the adults can't come in and lay eggs, then you don't have the larva doing the damage. And so it really prevents a lot of damage, and it prevents you having to get more aggressive with an insecticide if you can get the bugs to go lay their eggs
somewhere else
at your neighbor's house. Yeah. Which works great.
Let them deal with it.
Yeah. It's like, hey, please go over to the neighbor's house and, take care of their yard instead. So, some of these repellents will last 2 to 3 weeks. And, throughout the summer, I'll do an application, say the first part of June, and then I'll do another one end of June, first part of July. And by August, sometimes I don't even put my third application on, because at that point I'm just like, well, we haven't really had that many bugs. So it's like, I'm not doing it anymore. It's just fine. And so the repellents are a great partner with a low toxicity insecticide, especially something as safe as, like, say, the spinosad that we talked about earlier on in the show. The spinosad will kill the larval stages, and the repellent keeps the adults away. And so you use those in conjunction. Then you have a way to control the newly hatched larvae, or the worms or caterpillars that are just nibbling everything, because really the only thing that they do in life is like eat and poop, so they're just going to eat everything. Well, the spinosad will kill them and stop them from eating, and the repellent will prevent the adults from coming in and laying more eggs. So you break that cycle, and then all of a sudden you don't have more insects nibbling on your plants in the yard. So the combination of the two is very, very effective.
Now, for people that say, well, I'm worried because if I put that down, could it impact the pollinators, though?
It doesn't bother bees. It doesn't bother some of your beneficial insects like ladybugs or praying mantis either. So it does not bother them. And that's what I'm saying. Most of the flying insects that are like in the moth form or the fly form drives them crazy. They just leave and go somewhere else. But it won't bother your bees, and it won't bother your praying mantis or lady beetles.
So the ones that are really causing a nuisance are the ones that just don't like that smell at all.
It works great on those. Yeah, it works great on those.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got only about 2 more minutes, and then, of course, the bottom of the hour news break, we'll come back and talk about some more things. But just before we hit the news at the bottom of the hour, you mentioned that all of your bare root trees have just come in.
Right. So this week, our last shipment of bare root fruit trees has arrived. So we've got new batches of peaches and nectarines, apricots, plums, cherries. Those have all shown up. But then we've got another selection of apples that came in as well too. So pears all arrived, and then this next batch of fruit trees came. So really we have just about everything that we're gonna get for this year in bare root, and that includes raspberries and strawberries, blackberries, big big batch of honeyberries coming in, and they're hard to get. So we're going to have a nice selection of honeyberries, 2 different varieties. Those will be showing up any day now. Mm-hmm. But then we also have currants and gooseberries and blackberries, and it's just a great time to get out there and do some planting and add to your fruit growing arsenal there in your garden.
And we've talked about it in the past too with apples. You still getting people asking you, when are you going to get the Cosmic Crisp apple?
Yeah, Cosmic Crisp is a Washington only protected tree. So it's going to be a couple more years still before those are available. So if you live in Washington state, you can get them. But if you don't, you cannot.
And good luck crossing the border.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, they have like tree sniffing dogs out. So
they got to protect their product.
Protect them. Yeah, got to protect them.
Everybody loves them.
That is a really, really good apple.
It
and
is.
Eventually we're going to get it just like Honeycrisp. It was a long time before we could get Honeycrisp. Everybody wanted Honeycrisp, and Cosmic Crisp is probably even a little bit better. Yeah. So a couple more years and we'll actually have it. So.
All right. Well, we've got a lot more to talk about, a lot of things to do around the yard to start greening up the grass. And, there are some plants that, yes, you can put in the garden. We'll talk about that coming up next here on the Garden Guide on KVNU. KVNU local headlines here at the bottom of the hour. I'm Will Feelright. Well, officials with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have announced the new leaders of the Smithfield, Utah Temple. Michael Lee Stahelli and Linda Ann Gardner Stahelli have been called to serve as the new president and matron. Now, the couple, who reside in the Smithfield, Utah North Stake, bring extensive leadership experience to their new assignments. Michael Stahelli currently serves as a temple sealer. His previous church leadership roles include serving as an Area 70, stake president, bishop, and high counselor. Linda Stahelli is currently a temple worker. Her past leadership callings include serving as a stake young women president, ward young women president, and counselor in a ward primary presidency. Now, the Smithfield, Utah Temple was first announced in April of 2021 by then church president Russell M. Nelson. Open house and dedication dates have yet to be announced as it remains under construction. And Utah Governor Spencer Cox vetoed 2 bills this past week, including legislation that would have provided internet access on school buses, citing concerns over excessive screen time for students. Now, House Bill 462 aimed to help students, particularly those with long rural commutes, complete homework during extracurricular travel. Now, in a letter to legislative leaders, Cox acknowledged the practical challenges rural students face, but he also emphasized the need to prioritize human connection over device usage. Now, Cox also vetoed House Bill 164, noting it duplicated other past legislation and allowed a separate bill regarding precious metals to become law without his signature. Well, we're going to see some clouds and sunshine over the next couple of days as daytime temps are going to stay right around the low 70s with overnight temperatures around the high 30s. And it looks like we still could see some rain coming for Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. Will Feelright for KVNU News.
I'm Jim Bass. Well, let's tip it off with the men's top overall seed, getting a lift from this guy.
And Foster's content to dribble the ball inside half court, bothered by Darnley. Now takes it to the top of the circle and gently walks it back toward half court. He's just dribbling clock away. Right side, driving, shot up, good. Hit on the runner as he made some space.
And Caleb Foster back from injury. All 11 of his points in the second half, as heard on the Westwood One NCAA Radio Network. Isaiah Evans, 25. They rallied from 10 down in the second half, beat St. John's 80-75. Up next, UConn. Terrace Reed scored 20. Alice Caravan 17. They held off Michigan State 67-63. It's UConn Duke East Region final on Sunday. Yaxel Lindenberg scored 23, 12 boards and 7 assists. Michigan beats Alabama 90-77. They advance to the Elite Eight for the first time in 5 years and get Tennessee up next. They're 76-62 winners over Iowa State. 4th Elite Eight in school history, outscoring the Cyclones in the second half 42-29. How about this finish for the women?
They get it into Jackson. Good if it goes. Around and down for the Blue Devils. Duke advances to the Elite Eight. After missing 2 late free throws, Ashlyn Jackson hits the 3 at the buzzer.
As heard on ESPN. Ashland Jackson's 3 at the gun. Duke over LSU 87-85. Hannah Hidalgo 31 points, 11 boards, 10 steals. Notre Dame over Vanderbilt 67-64. Sarah Strong 21 points, 10 boards. The defending champs UConn over North Carolina easy 63-42. And Kiki Rice scored 21. Lauren Betts 16. Another 1 seed UCLA besting Minnesota 80-56. Aaron Judge, a 2-run home run, snapping an 0-for-7 start to the season. Yankees blank the Giants 3-0.
Visit phassociation.org to help provide hope for children with PH. The Pulmonary Hypertension Association, empowered by hope.
It's the Garden Guide on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Welcome back. It is the Garden Guide here on News Talk KVNU. We'll feel right along with Mark Anderson of Anderson Seed and Garden, talking all things about lawn and garden. As we've mentioned earlier on in the show, not able to take your phone calls this morning, but we are answering all sorts of questions about how to take care of your fruit trees that are starting to blossom. We were talking last segment about pruning and treating for diseases. A lot of people too starting to see their grass green up a little bit. And, you know, one of the advantages of not having the snow that we had this year, Mark, I haven't seen any snow mold at all.
No snow mold because we didn't have snow stuck on the ground for 4 months in a row.
No.
Yeah. Everybody's lawn's perking up. We are starting to see a lot of weeds though. So not as many diseases, but that could change. But the weeds are just taken off like crazy because we really did have a wet winter. You think about it. So it was kind of dry in October, but then it got wet in November and then it got really, really wet in December. And then it was kind of dry in January. And then we got a whole bunch of water again in February. So the ground moisture is there. The water really did come. It just didn't come as snow. And so if you look at our water year, I think we're 20 or 25% ahead of normal with the amount of water that we received. It just hasn't been in snow. And so those weeds loved that water and they absolutely love the nice warm weather. And so they're popping up like crazy. So there's some things we can do to control weeds that are in the flower beds or in the vegetable garden, but some different things we can do for the weeds that are in your turf as well too. So weeds going crazy. Yeah, they're just going nuts.
Well, and on top of that, too, a lot of people I see this time of year, they're starting to get some aerating done if they didn't do it in the fall.
Yeah.
And then we were mentioning last week when we were doing the Garden Guide that, you know, it's a great time to maybe just incorporate some new grasses.
To overseed. So the other really good time to overseed is right after you killed a whole bunch of weeds. And it's hard to take care of weeds or try and control weeds after you've seeded because you've got brand new grass coming up and that can cause some problems for your new grass if you're spraying for weeds. So really the best process to do right now would probably be put some humate or just a good fertilizer or both on your turf right now and really get things going. And then for your first mowing, you can mow much, much closer. You can really cut it close, and as you cut closer, you'll get rid of all that dead grass and all the leftovers from last year, and you'll really get a nice, good, clean, fresh start. And at that point, you can either spray for weeds before you mow, and then really control morning glory and thistles and mallow and clover and dandelions that are popping up like crazy. Give those a couple days to absorb that herbicide and then mow it really close. So really you want to mow at least 2 or 3 days before or at least 2 or 3 days after you've mowed so that your herbicide has the ability to do the work that it's doing. But then after you get those weeds controlled, and we've got some great cool weather herbicides. So we're talking weed free zone, works in daytime temperatures as cool as 45 degrees. Oh, wow. So right now we're in the 50s and 60s. Perfect time to control some of these weeds without damaging your turf. And Weed Free Zone is going to work on the hardest to control weeds. So morning glory, thistles, mallow, clover, Japanese clover, spurge. We're seeing great results with these nice warm temperatures on controlling those weeds. Once you kill those weeds, great time to overseed. So spray, get those weeds under control, mow really close, gets rid of all the dead weeds, gets rid of all the dead grass. All of a sudden, the grass is really short. Great time to aerate right after that. So you aerate it. There's little holes all through your turf, which is a perfect place to try and introduce some new seed. So not only did we spray and killed the weeds, and once the weeds are dead, there's an empty spot, and we need the grass to take its place. But now we've aerated it and created more empty spots.
Yeah, perfect.
More empty spots. And the best thing to fill that with is some new grass seed. Because if you don't fill it with the new grass seed, guess what? More weed seeds.
They just come right back.
They're going to come. And so if you don't take care of those empty spots, whether you've aerated or whether you've sprayed and controlled weeds, you're just going to have bare spots, and those weeds are going to find a place to take again. But if you control those weeds and aerate and then overseed with some new varieties of grass, then your new varieties of grass will take those empty spots and fill in, and you'll have a nice dense turf that's more drought tolerant, doesn't need as much water, it's more disease resistant, doesn't need disease control, more insect resistant, doesn't need to be, you don't have to apply an insecticide every year to stop the bugs from damaging your grass. It just saves so much maintenance and so much work. Your grass looks better. It uses less water. You don't have to use pesticides on it. Makes a huge, huge difference. And right after you've mowed it close, killed the weeds, aerated, perfect time, absolutely perfect time to overseed with some new grass.
Okay.
Yeah, great time. And we've got some amazing varieties of grass. So we've partnered with the Cache Water District, and we're offering our Eden grass at a 50% discount. Now, the Eden is a very, very drought-tolerant blend of very aggressive bluegrass that is very drought-tolerant and some turf-type dwarf tall fescues, which sounds kind of like an oxymoron, but it's a dwarf tall fescue. Yeah. And so it looks more like Kentucky bluegrass, but it produces roots that are 3 to 4 feet long into your soil. So it will go after the water that's there. So Eden, like I said, we partnered with the Cache Water District. And if you want to take advantage of them matching your purchase price, with a 50% match, you've got to go and register on their website and be a part of that. But then, say you want to replace your park strip, you can get half of that paid for from Cache Water District, because this is a very, very water conserving grass, but it's good looking. I mean, it looks great. I mean, it's soft like a bluegrass. It's durable like a fescue, but the fescue is a finer blade, so you don't get those really big, thick bladed grass in your turf. It looks amazing. It greens up early. It's disease and insect resistant, and it uses about 50% less water and still looks great. So the Cache Water District is promoting, replace that grass in your park strip. Maybe you want to replace the grass in your entire turf.
Yeah, your whole lawn.
Yeah, so you can do that as well too. And we can walk you through that process. It's really not as difficult to do as you think, but it's time to replace some of those old grasses with some new grasses that require less maintenance and less water and less pesticides, and you still have an amazing, great looking turf that really helps our environment instead of causing water problems for it as well too.
And great if you can save 50% on it.
Oh, you can't beat it. Yeah, you can't beat it. So the Cache Water District is sponsoring that, and we're trying to replace as much turf in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years or decade as we can, because if we get everybody to start changing their turf out and putting in these new varieties of turf, we can save 30 or 40 or even 50% of the water that we're using right now, and still have the turf look as good and perform better with less insecticides than we're currently doing right now.
Okay. And that's called the Eden Mix.
Eden Mix,
You can take advantage of that 50% deal on.
It is a good looking grass. It's soft. It greens early, stays green late into the fall.
Has deep roots.
Really deep roots that goes after that water that the lawn got last week. It'll go find that water. But insect resistant, disease resistant, drought tolerant, great turf.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. And 50% off when you pre-register.
So
it's a program, you have to register with
the Cache Water District. Yep. So if you just come in the store looking for it, we're gonna charge you the regular price. But if you come in and you've got authorization from the Cache Water District, then we can drop that price in half for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of grasses, it's a great time to be able to start fertilizing. A lot of people probably ask, what's the best mix fertilizer to really kind of start your grass and get it perking up?
We have multiple options since we're preventing weeds and even killing weeds since the weather's been a little bit warmer. So we do have some weed and feeds that do great, like the Weed Free Zone comes in a weed and feed option. So that's going to kill what's there, even in cooler temperatures, and feed your turf. But then we have like a crabgrass preventer with fertilizer that has the weed preventer in there. It's going to work on a lot of your weedy grasses and a bunch of your broadleaf weeds and feed the lawn at the same time. Otherwise, if you want just a really good fertilizer, I would recommend either our 16-16-16 or our 23-3-16, which has a little bit more slow-release nitrogen in it and a 5% iron. So it'll really, really green the lawn up and make it look great without it growing too fast. But right now, I've got so many people that are putting back to green on their turf right now because, we haven't had rain for like almost 2 weeks. Yeah. And so the turf's kind of starting to stress a little bit, especially ones that have greened up already. And the back to green will make your water much, much more effective when you get it, so you don't have to water as much while we're kind of in this dry spell. But then probably in April, we'll have 2 weeks of really, really wet as well too. So it'll perk the lawn back up like crazy, even if you don't want to do anything with it. But a product like Hydrotain or Back to Green will make your soil much more absorbent than it is, and you won't lose any of that water to runoff or evaporation. It'll pull it all right down into the soil. So it's going to make your water, whether you apply it or whether Mother Nature applies it, it's going to make your water much, much more absorbent. It's going to pull that down in the soil. And it's going to hold it there where your turf or your flowers or your shrubs or your vegetable garden can actually utilize that water for a longer period of time because it's retaining the moisture instead of losing it. And so Hydrotain or Back to Green can make your water 30% to 50% more effective with the same amount of water.
Okay.
Yeah, which is a huge, huge savings.
Yeah.
If everybody's cutting their lawn watering back 30%. By using a product like Hydrotain, or if you do the Hydrotain and replace some of your grass with a drought tolerant grass, you're going to be saving 50 to 60 to maybe even 70% of the water that you've been using in the past and still have a great looking turf.
Yeah. Even better if you've introduced a new mix like the Eden mix we were talking about.
The hardest thing that we have to like remind people about is like, you don't have to use an insecticide on some of these newer grasses. So, bluegrass traditionally has been attacked by sod webworms and billbugs and grubs. And they don't eat these newer varieties of grass. So you just can eliminate that cost. Like say you spent $100 every year to prevent insects from damaging your turf. Well, you can take that $100 this year, put it into new grass seed, and then you won't have to invest it again. Yeah, you just won't have to invest it again. So it's going to save you $100 every single year when you don't have to do a disease control, and another $100 when you don't have to do an insecticide, and another $100 when you don't have to water as much.
Yeah.
I mean, so there's some financial incentive there to overseed with some of these newer varieties of grass, because all the things that you're doing that are adding up year after year after year, you don't have to do them anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, just don't have to do it anymore.
Well, great time to start fertilizing your lawn. Let's talk about now getting your flower beds, gardens fertilized and prepped and ready to go.
Yeah. So we've started planting all of our cold crops. Mm-hmm. So we're talking peas, spinach, lettuce, radishes, onions, cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, kale. Those can all go in right now. So great time to get those planted. And if you're preparing your garden or if you're preparing your raised beds, there's some great fertilizers you can put right in with the seed right when you're planting. So we'll probably have Mark from Green Grow on the show again.
Oh, great.
Since he was on last year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great visit with them. And they don't talk about fertilizing plants. They talk about rejuvenating soil. And so their fertilizers not only feed your plants, but they rejuvenate and regenerate your soil instead. And so by regenerating and recharging your soil, all of a sudden your plants are able to utilize the nutrient and the minerals that are in your soil, and all of a sudden your vegetables are going to taste better, they're going to grow better, they're going to produce more. And so an organic fertilizer like Green Grow's fertilizer has all the building blocks to regenerate your soil, but also the natural nutrients that that soil will free that nutrient up, make it available to your plants. So all of a sudden your soil is healthier, your plants are healthier, and they can get the nutrition that they need to really produce what you want. And we used the Green Grow last year, and it was absolutely outstanding, like amazing fertilizer. And one of their little 4-pound bags, I think it runs like $14, and it cover 1,000 square feet.
Oh,
yeah. So it really goes a long, it really goes a long way. All natural, all organic. It's loaded with beneficial microbes and microorganisms and mycorrhiza, all natural fertilizers. It's got biochar to really build your soil up, make an environment where all this good biology can start to do its work. It's got humate in there. It's got kelp. It's got worm castings. And it's just got everything in there to really rejuvenate and regenerate your soil, but also to give back to your plants as well too. So an amazing fertilizer that's just easy to use. You can put it right in the row with the seeds when you plant. You can side dress your plants with it. You can put it over your entire raised bed and just work it in. Yeah. All of a sudden your soil's improved, and your nutritional value in the soil for your plants is improved, and then their ability to pick up the nutrient is greatly improved because of the type of soil that we're building there.
You know, we were talking about incorporating new grasses because grasses and different grass seeds and types have changed over the years, and I think fertilizing too has changed so dramatically. Huge. My grandpa, I remember back in the day, he'd fill up the old white pickup truck with as much steer manure as he could fit in there, and he'd lay that stuff so thick on his garden, but that's all he had.
Yeah, that's all he had.
Fertilizer has really, really changed over the last 20 years. The
technology that is being implemented to realize the true value of the nutrients that we're using, whether it's a compost or, whether it's a, bone meal, blood meal, feather meal, alfalfa meal, kelp, seaweed combination, it's releasing all the nutrient value that is in those fertilizers and making it available for the plants. So I'm thinking 20 years ago, we didn't really talk about organic fertilizers that much. And it's not because they weren't good. It's because they took forever to work. They were just so slow to release the nutrient out. It's just like you could do all these organic fertilizers, but it would be like the whole season before they'd start to release the fertilizer. So you wouldn't see a difference in your plants. But the new technology has partnered these fertilizers, same old fertilizers as what we had
back years ago,
30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. But now they're partnered with biology and with microbes and with microorganisms and mycorrhiza and other natural resources to break those nutrients down and pre-digest them so that the plants can actually pick up and utilize the nutrient that's in there. So not only are we feeding the plants, but we're feeding the soil, which in turn feeds your plants with a better source of nutrient than what they were getting previously before. And so it's really breaking these nutrients down and turning them into something that your plants can use almost instantly.
Not only is it better for the plants, but better for your neighbors. I often wondered how my grandparents, their neighbors had to hate garden season around their house because
put the manure out there and it's
stuff out so thick
for a month and a half.
It'd have a neon green glow to it at night when the sun would go down.
So what we found is those manures are still very, very effective fertilizers, and you want to use them, but you want to use them in correct proportion. Yeah. And so we're not putting 4 inches of a steer compost out there anymore. We're doing a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of a steer compost, but we're balancing it with a whole bunch of other things as well too. So we're putting leaves and we're putting dried grass clippings on there, and we're doing some straw, or we're doing some wood shavings, and we're doing some humate to like boost the mineral and the microbe content in there. I mean, we're doing a variety of different materials in the correct proportions to get them to break down. And then as they break down, then they release that nutrient out for the plants. But then if we introduce mycorrhiza and we introduce, those beneficial microbes and microorganisms, all of a sudden the soil's alive again, and it's doing what it's supposed to. And it frees all that nutrient up and makes that available to the plants. And it's doing it in a very quick time frame instead of taking the entire season for that nutrition to break down so your plants can use it. So, Home Garden Show was really fun. I talked to a bunch of new gardeners about some of these techniques, and they were just like blown away with the amount of science and technology behind it. It's not just mythology and experimentation. Experimentation's all been done. We've like figured out how to make some of these things work better than they've ever worked before. And so we're seeing bigger plants and more production and, more nutrition coming out of our plants. So really you can grow things in your own garden that are way more nutritious than what you're buying at the grocery store, or, getting in a can, or even getting out of the freezer, because what you're growing is better for you than anything else that you can get. And that kind of starts with building your soil too. Building your soil up.
And it's so good for the family to be able to work together, to be able to get out in the garden together and actually do something and accomplish something together.
So I had quite a few people asking me about raised beds this past weekend. And, they're like, well, we want to do raised beds because we don't have a lot of space, but we really want to have a garden in the backyard. So we're going to do 2 or 3, raised beds. And they talked about building them from redwood or cedar. And we have some options at Anderson's, which are concrete block raised beds. They're really 8.5 feet long by 5.5 feet wide. They're made from colored concrete blocks, and they kind of fit together a little bit like Legos. They don't have the snap lock to them, but they stack on top of each other. They're 16 inches deep, 8.5 feet long, 5.5 feet wide, and you can control the soil that you're putting in there. So we're going to put better soil in there, so you don't have to worry about rocks and junk and debris and stuff in there. We're going to build soil from scratch, and so we can build a soil that you really can turn over with a shovel or a fork really easily. You don't even have to like till it with a tiller, because we're putting this amazing soil in there that you're going to use for years and years and years. And as we add fertilizer to it, like the green grow, all of a sudden it's going to be more nutritious. It's going to be alive with microbes and microorganisms and worms. And, it's going to be this alive soil that's going to produce more vegetables than you ever thought you could produce in an 8x5 area.
And how does it compare in cost to doing the like redwood?
It is our concrete block raised beds, those 8.5 by 5.5 by 16 inches deep, they run about $150 to $170 depending on which color you want to get. And so we've got like 8 different colors to choose from. Some are a little bit less expensive than others. The charcoal, that's my favorite. It looks really good. And the concrete is colored all the way through. So it's not just like a coloring on the outside. It's the color all the way through. So these beds could last for 30 years and still be the same color as when you took them home.
And isn't going to warp like
it's not going to warp. Does. Yeah. And if you hit it with the lawnmower, it's going to probably do more damage to the lawnmower than the lawnmower will do to it. And, buying redwood or cedar for that type of project, you're probably into $150 just for the wood. But then you have to make the cuts and you got to screw them all together and you do all that work. Basically with the concrete blocks, all you need is a little bit of concrete adhesive and, you've got to level it. Absolutely. We've had customers that got it and they didn't think they had to level. They just kind of like raked the area and threw them out, and it kind of was, I would call it lumpy. It wasn't very level. So, but if you get that ground leveled out first with some sand and a little bit of gravel and really get it leveled, then once you install that and you just use a little bit of concrete adhesive between the layers and between the bricks. That will be pretty permanent. Yeah, okay. It's not going to go anywhere. And the corners are built to last. I mean, they're heavier and they kind of lock the blocks in. And then there's some kind of separators that make your longer runs kind of stick together as well, too, with bigger blocks. So it's very attractive. They're very durable. They are mobile, so if you decide to move somewhere else, you can take them with you, but it does take a little bit of work, and you want to put the right kind of soil in there. So we're talking 50% topsoil, 50% raised bed mix it together. You've got an awesome base for garden soil.
Great way to get started.
Yep, for sure.
All right. And just before we wrap up, again, a reminder too, a lot of the bare root fruit trees have come in stock, and now is a great time to get a lot of those bare root plants, and you can get them started.
Get them while the weather's good. March is the best time to plant. So berries, strawberries, blueberries, honeyberries, raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, and fruit trees. We've got them all.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And we hope you join us again next week for the Garden Guide, as we'll be talking about more things to get done around the yard. It's definitely that time of year. Get out and enjoy this beautiful spring weather, because you just never know what Mother Nature's going to send next week. And if you missed a part of the show, you can always go back and listen to this and other episodes by going to kvnutalk.com and checking out the podcast library.
Know about it. Talk about it.
This nation belongs to all of us.
News Talk KVNU Logan, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.